Okay, so first, I think why having a clear structure in your speech is so important. First, I think it's about having a better flow in your speech. A structured speech means that it's a smooth progression of ideas. Like, for example, why is your argument likely to happen, to why your argument is so important, to, for example, again, why your argument is exclusive, and also the comparative between your team and the other team. This helps everyone to be able to digest your argument far more easily. If you sebagian besar orang tahu biasa kalau kita speech-nya nggak ke structure, ada yang biasa banyak nya banyak pause between speeches karena mereka nggak tahu how to move between one part of their speech to the other. Second, I think it's about better time management because when you have a clear structure, it helps you manage your time more efficiently, especially during the debate. It ensures that you manage to cover all of your essential points within 7 minutes, not under time nor over time. Because oftentimes when you don't know how to move from one part, that you spend a lot of time not knowing what to say, silent during your speech. Therefore, you lose the potential to spend your time far more efficiently. Third, I think it's about case development and effective response. You need to construct a speech by presenting it. It doesn't matter how good your argument is, but when you are unable to present it to the judges, itu sama aja dengan nol. This not only strengthens your main point if kalau kalau strukturnya clear, because you manage to highlight it to the judges, apa yang judges should dengar in your speech. Therefore, kalian juga bisa respond more effectively to the opposing arguments of the other side ketika speech kalian very clear. Lastly, I think it's also about improving your self-confidence. Ketika kalian, for example, itu gacor speech-nya, kayak nggak ada e-nya, nggak ada tersendat-sendatnya, it helps your self-confidence within the debate. Kalian merasa bahwa kalian is doing great in your speech. It helps you be able to improvise even during your speech when you like satset during your speech. Whereas ketika kalian tersendat, nggak tahu mau bilang apa, setelah turun speech pasti self confidence kalian turun, especially during debates. Next. Okay, so with that, being clear about what's it important. So I'm going to divide the structure into three. First, the structure of the first speaker. Second, the structure of the second speaker. And also lastly, the structure of the third speaker. So the first speakers should ideally focus on the delivery of the main case, setting the foundation for your side to win the debate. Therefore, the structures should reflect that. You should know how much you should spend on in each section of your speech. This is something that's quite flexible, to be honest, but usually, ideally, Prime Minister should spend 1 minute or even 2 minutes on setup, 3 minutes on first argument, and 3 minutes on second argument. Second, leader opposition, which the first speaker of the opposition, member of government, and also member of opposition in a BP debate should spend 2 minutes on rebuttals, 2.5 minutes on first arguments, and the rest of your time, if you have any other extending arguments or any other arguments in your speech. Next. So for second speaker, your job is actually quite simple. Your main job is to respond to the previous speaker's arguments and extend the debate. While first speakers have an entire grocery list to check off for their speeches, second speakers enjoy the simple structure of just responses and also extensions. So second speakers are also known as deputies because when you government you're a deputy prime minister, and when you're on opposition you're deputy leader of opposition. You should ideally spend 3 or even 4 minutes on responses depending on the debate, and the rest of your time on extending or even coming up with new arguments. Next, please. Okay, so for third speaker, actually I'm not a third speaker, so I don't know much about this. If you want to know more about being a third speaker, you should learn dengan Rika. Rika adalah third speakernya HEDS, basically one of the best ones. So third speakers are probably the most responsive speakers on the entire debate. According to the rules of parliamentary debating, third speakers are actually not allowed to have new matter or new argument in their speech. That is because new arguments that change the direction of your side's case. Meaning, if you want to extend existing arguments, you can, but you cannot make up an entirely new one. Hence, the third speaker's job mainly revolves around responding to the other side and as well as weighing up what your team has said. Third speakers are called whips, either government whip or opposition whip. So ketika kalian third speaker, karena job kalian itu cuma untuk nge-rebuttal and also nge-weigh clashes yang ada di debate, that is literally what you do. You guys can spend like 7 minutes talking just about responding to the other side or oftentimes people also integrate their responses within their clashes. So 7 minutes just pure talking about clashes, why your side will win the debate, why the arguments from your side far more important than the other side. Next. So okay, so let's dive on it lebih dalam lagi. So on setup itu basically kalian ngedefine background of the speech, kayak nge-setup dulu debatnya seperti apa, jalannya mau kemana, dan apa sebenarnya problem yang kalian mau solve in your side of the house. So the first minute of your speech is called the golden minute. That's because you have to make your speech appealing in just under 1 or 2 minutes. Like oftentimes, even having a very good opening statement in your speech can make the difference. Like it can hook the attention of the judges. There are a lot of good speakers, for example kayak Boseo yang karena opening statementnya bagus sekali, everyone basically listens to him during his speech. Nggak ada yang namanya people bosan dengar speechnya. He's basically one of the gods when it comes to opening statements. The way to do that is to make your setup concise, catchy, and also understandable. The setup is sort of the background section of your speech. What is the motion really about? Why is it worthwhile to implement this policy, assuming this is a THW motion? So a basic setup should ideally consist of these things. First, the problem in the status quo. Second, stance and mechanism. C, strategic definition. D, characterization and also contextualization. So what is the problem in the status quo? It's basically problem apa yang ada di status quo hingga mestinya lahir. That's why the debate happens. Karena ada problem yang government teams mau solve and believe that it can be solved using the mechanism that they want to bring to the debate. Second, stance and mechanism is basically the how part of your case. Bagaimana di sisi kalian akan solve the problem that you want to solve, basically through the mechanism. See strategic definition. Yang saya selalu lihat, for example, apalagi di newbies, itu kalau kalian ngedefinisikan sesuatu di mosi, kalian ngedefinisikan seperti definisi dari kamus. That is unstrategic. Itu nggak strategis. What you guys should do itu make a subjective definition that is strategic. Kayak how do you define the motion that benefits your case? Like for example, I'm not going to define, for example, let's say the motion is this house would ban smoking. I'm not going to define smoking like, oh, smoking itu menghisap rokok. Smoking saya definisikan sebagai act of independence di mana saya bisa kontrol what I do with my body. That's how I would, for example, define things in the motion. Lastly is characterization and contextualization. So what characterization means itu bagaimana kalian ngedefine the actor or stakeholder yang di-impact sama motion. Kalau ada motion yang talk about children, kalian harus nge-characterize children itu seperti apa, interestnya mereka apa aja, dan kebutuhan apa yang mereka miliki di debate. Kalau kalian talk about minoritas, apa sebenarnya yang dibutuhkan sama minoritas, apa karakternya mereka dan sebagainya. So sama dengan kontekstualisasi itu seperti framing debatnya itu sedang ada di mana, atau debatnya ini sedang berada di dunia yang kayak gimana. Usually characterization dan contextualization itu bisa ditaruh di setup, tapi biasa orang juga taruh di dalam argumen supaya menghemat waktu. And it's actually a matter of preference, tapi sebenarnya even if you guys put it on your setup, karakterisasi and also contextualisasi, you should also put it inside your arguments. Next. Okay, I don't know if you guys can read this. Bisa baca ini atau enggak. So basically this is one of setups yang saya bikin in one of my speeches in a previous competition. So in this setup, I talk about the framing as to how exactly the debate happens. I talk about how in the status quo there are beauty standards that affect the debate. I talk about how society is normative. I also talk about why in status quo orang-orang itu hidup di dunia yang kapitalis. Ketika orang melakukan kontekstualisasinya itu harus strategis, nge-benefit to your side. Jangan bikin karakterisasi atau kontekstualisasi yang malah benefit di other side. Kalau saya mau menjelaskan bahwa bahwa orang-orang miskin itu ke harm in status quo, saya akan bikin framing di mana kapitalisme yang membuat mereka tidak bisa cari kerja, for example. Jangan menjelaskan bahwa orang-orang ini tidak bisa kerja, for example, karena bukan karena kapitalisme or anything like that. So what I also explain in this speech is also about karakteristik. If you guys remember, ini speech yang saya bawa ketika di open house. Di open house waktu itu, karena maksudnya tentang parasocial relationship, I talk about what is exactly the characteristic of parasocial. Di sini I explain that parasocial itu sebenarnya nggak stagnan. Saya jelaskan kalau for example orang-orang sebenarnya itu punya expectation yang sifatnya unrealistic towards celebrities, and ini nge-benefit my case karena ini ngejelasin kenapa parasocial relationship itu terrible.
Jawabannya mungkin agak klasik, tapi baca buku ini. Apa saya bisa keliling dunia kapal waktu banyak cukup jadi kapal saya. Ibadah. Pertanyaan yang lebih gitu.
Siapapun yang nyalain mic-nya, please turn it off. Thank you. Okay, so next, please. Okay, so second is about arguments. So arguments are basically the core of debating. These are fleshed out reasons you should support or oppose a motion. So an ideal first speaker or should have two arguments, and also second speakers oftentimes also have two arguments as well, and even more. But it's not actually that simple. What you should do when you make arguments is to use an intuitive chain of logic. Usually, you want to prove that the context of the debate the argument first, then the likelihood of your argument happening, and also the importance. But it also doesn't stop just there. You should compare why the likelihood and the importance only exists in your side and it cannot exist in opposition, basically explaining the exclusivity of your argument. You should always make comparison and also even ifs within your arguments as well. This is to make you understand the context, then believe the argument before you go to all of the implications of that. But you should not aim to generate just layers of explanation. You should also generate clear supporting reasons so that if some are taken down and the others still stand. That's why if and ifs are important. That means you want each to be well explained because otherwise they don't stand strong. You when you explain, okay, why is this likely, why is this important, both things have to be really well explained. I- You cannot make any of those points just like one liner or one statement explanations because it can easily uh, be broken down by your opponent. So if you have gotten 7 layers of explanations, but sorry, 7 layers, yeah, of explanations, but there are liners, they can just be dismissed as a lack of explanations. Always remember, quality is better than quantity. Even if you only make one argument in your speech, as long as it is well explained, itu sangat cukup kuat dibanding 3 atau 4 argumen yang sifatnya hanya one liner. Next please. Okay, again, so this is an example of an argument that I make that have those explanations that that explains why something is likely to happen, what are exactly the importance of the argument, and what are the comparatives in comparative towards your opponent, and also if and ifs. Mm, Notice that I make 3 points that explains different thing. I talk about why marketing it punya peran yang krusial dalam membantu bisnis untuk bisa punya uh, uh, advantage di market yang sangat kompetitif, and why is that the case. Second, I talk about why it also harms international businesses. Ini a second explanation as to what exactly are the harms and why that's important. Third, I also talk about accountability when it comes to marketing and how that can manifest and why it doesn't exist in opposition. Next, please. Okay, so rebuttal. So a rebuttal is basically you responding and explaining to the judges why the arguments made by your opponent is basically wrong. So for the sake of simplicity, let's say the impact of your opponent's argument is A. So most rebuttals should start with A minus rebuttal or direct negation to explain that your opponent's benefits or harms are basically untrue. But even if A is true, you should add layers explaining that okay, even if it is true, it is not likely to happen, it is not justified, it is not effective in achieving the benefit, it is not exclusive. The benefit can also happen in our side. You guys can talk about why the benefit is actually not that important. You guys can talk about why again the benefits itself is not actually as beneficial as the other benefits. So basically, you're talking about the trade-off, assuming that the benefit exists. There are other benefits that can be better. Always connect the layers with if and ifs. So don't just explain that just one point, like just not why is it not likely to happen. You guys should explain it like, okay, first it is not likely to happen. Even if it is likely to happen, it is not justified. Even if it is justified, it is not effective, and etc. Next, please. So this is an example of rebuttal that I made in one of my previous competitions. So this is a rebuttal uh, towards an argument that my opponent made, talking about why it is principally right to cap marketing budgets of companies. I rebut it by saying that government talks about the principal need to reduce. No, wait. This is wait. No. This is no. This is a motion talking about why we should significantly reduce the preservation of art that have no moral values. Uh, Government talk about, okay, why is it principally right to do this? I rebut it by saying that, okay, sure, the government talks about their principal need to reduce preservation, but we think that this is not true. On the other hand, we think that it is actually principally wrong to even try and decide what kind of art is acceptable, and how people get to use art, because art as a form of entertainment and a source of happiness is still a principal right. Notice that government wants art as something that is exclusively educational, but why this is wrong. The reason why people approach art, because we live in a problematic world where sadness is a default mode of your day. For instance, on a societal level, you get patriarchy, you get poverty that makes you sad. And also on individual level, sometimes because you are heartbroken, because you're tired from your homework, for example, and that makes you sad. That is why people opt into art to begin with, and why people find art as valuable, because art is our support system in a very problematic world. It is principally wrong to limit any source of happiness. So this is basically an example of rebuttal that you can make. Always connect the rebuttal with more layers of even ifs, just talking about different aspects of the argument that your opponent makes. Next, please. Okay, so in general, a good structure is as follows. First, opening statement. But notice that this is actually optional. Oftentimes, people just go straight up to rebuttals, people just go straight up to arguments, because sometimes mereka punya banyak rebuttal yang mereka mau bawa, dan mereka mau jelaskan banyak argumen. Jadi mereka biasa conserve time and nggak usah make opening statements. Tapi opening statements itu bisa beneficial karena mereka yang attract attentionnya orang, and also make your speech lebih memorable, gampang diingat oleh you. Just as Boseo, kalian bisa nonton speechnya Boseo di YouTube and look at how beautiful his opening statements are. Second, setup. Ideally, you should spend setup 1 to 2 minutes. Bahkan sebenarnya walaupun ideally setup itu untuk first speaker, kadang second speaker juga tetap butuh bawa setup in uh, different aspects of setup. Bahkan ketika first speakernya lupa bawa, second speakernya lah yang punya tanggung jawab untuk again bawa lagi setupnya. So untuk first speaker biasanya mereka bawa problem, mereka bawa mekanisme, mereka bawa stance, mereka bawa karakterisasi dan kontekstualisasi. Second speaker biasanya tetap bawa, for example, yang kayak problem, mereka tetap bawa karakterisasi dan kontekstualisasi yang mereka mau bawa di dalam speech mereka, karena cenderung second speaker kadang bawa argumen yang berbeda dengan first speakernya, maka karakterisasi dan kontekstualisasinya juga sering beda. Setup seperti karakterisasi dan kontekstualisasi itu biasa orang tetap juga integrasikan ke dalam rebuttal dan juga argumennya. Jadi kadang setup itu kadang terbaur ke dalam argumen kalian. Third, rebuttal. You guys should spend 1 or 2 minutes on rebuttal if you are a first speaker, or even 3 to 4 minutes if you are a second speaker, and basically your entire speech if you are a third speaker. But sometimes you will also integrate rebuttalnya ke dalam argumen. Kadang-kadang rebuttalnya have the same point as the argument. Karena kadang the rebuttal of something itu biasanya hanya the opposite of your argument. So let's say kalian mau jelaskan kenapa argumen prinsipalnya lawan kalian salah, tapi di argumen kalian juga jelaskan kenapa this is a principle right thing to do. Jadi kadang penjelasannya mirip-mirip, jadi cenderung orang gabungkan saja ke dalam satu argumen. So lastly, the arguments. Usually people spend 2 to even 3 minutes on one argument. So within arguments, people talk about first, why is it likely to happen? Why is it important? Why is it exclusive? What is the comparatives? And also the even ifs of the argument. And usually, ideally, in your speech, you should focus on making just two arguments, but making sure that those two arguments is well explained, rather than making many arguments, but they're all just one-liners. Next, please. Okay, so sampai sekarang, any questions? Okay, Bilal, what's your question?
Okay, thank you for the answers that have been given to me. I would like to ask about, I would like to bring a matter about the strategic definition. I still don't understand the basic concept of strategic definition. So is it like I have to explain my setups towards my opposition so that it can actually benefit me? And I still don't understand how it works, because based on my experience, what I do is just definite something when I'm trying to argue about my motion. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I always see biasanya kalau anak-anak SMA, anak-anak SMP or newbies debate, kalau mereka bawa definition on the motion, kadang definitionnya kayak definisi kamus, kayak secara objektif menjelaskan sesuatu. Kayak biasa contoh, let's say ada mosi tentang feminisme. Biasa orang menjelaskan apa itu feminisme. Kayak saya sebagai juri and most people are kayak semuanya setuju apa itu secara objektif apa itu feminisme. Kayak you don't have to explain it again, semua orang udah tahu. But what you can do itu menjelaskan feminisme sesuai dengan case-mu, kayak secara bias, secara subjektif dijelaskan apa artinya. Contoh, let's say kalau how would you define feminisme kalau di debat, Bilal?
Kalau saya, if I'm gonna definite on what is feminism, if I were on a house or the government side, I would try to probably explain like feminism is an ideology that is being held highly to regard to protect women's rights, and so therefore I would try to explain on feminism is an ideology where women trying to say that they were equal and they deserve the same rights as the male counterparts. And I will try to explain on how beneficial feminism towards our life as a human. So there's to trying to give a perspective towards the opposition of why is feminism is actually beneficial. That's probably what I would try to do. Is it actually correct, or it may need a little bit of improvement?
Oke, mungkin secara that's true, itu memang definisinya feminisme, but one not itu kayak sesuatu yang semua orang udah tahu, kayak why would you tell me something that I already know, buang-buang waktu. Second, it's boring. Iya, kayak it's kayak terdengar monoton, terdengar robotik. What I would do, kayak let's say kalau saya stance-ku itu support feminisme, I would define feminisme sebagai feminism is basically the reaction of all women collectively to fight back against their rights, against the patriarchy that has held them back all their life. That way, itu definisinya nge-help your case and also terdengar lebih menarik di telinganya juri. Why is that important? Karena usually attentionnya juri itu bakal lebih bakal lebih fokus ke your speech as a whole. Kalau seandainya the beginning of your speech itu enak didengar. Kalau terdengar monoton, terdengar robotik, itu jadi kayak malas dengar, especially if you're telling them things that they already know. Kayak orang udah tahu feminisme itu tentang equal rights, feminisme itu tentang gender equality. Kalau dijelaskan seperti kamus, jatuh-jatuhnya seperti ya again boring. Basically that is. Kalau for example saya nggak support, kalau di stance di mana saya nggak support feminisme, what I would define feminisme itu beda lagi. I would not define it as an organization that fights for equal rights. Saya akan jahat kasih definisinya. Saya akan bilang bahwa feminisme itu bukan merupakan ideologi yang mendukung equal rights. Feminisme adalah ideologi yang mendukung matriarki. Mungkin secara objektif itu belum tentu, tapi secara subjektif it helps my case bahwa feminisme itu sebenarnya mendukung matriarki, which secara objektif is not always true, but it helps my case, and that's the point of a debate. A debate is about why your side is right, not kenapa. It's not about kayak giving an objective measure through something, karena debat itu is about perspektifmu sebagai government atau opposition. Therefore, you need to be biased when giving facts or giving definitions.
Thank you, Kak, for the answers.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Alif, what's your question?
Jadi kalau misalnya Kak, the first proposition or the prime minister defend the motion from the kamus definition, dia pakai definisi kamus yang flat begitu tadi yang seperti Kakak jelaskan. Jadi bolehkah kita sebagai leader of opposition redefine the motion tapi dengan yang tadi Kakak bilang dengan subjektif?
Oke. Usually redefining something itu ketika memang betul-betul salah. For example, kayak ada orang yang bilang feminisme itu organisasi sepak bola. Itu betul-betul salah, and redefining. Sedangkan kalau strategic definition is about defining something as based on your perspective sebagai sesuatu yang jahat. Contoh, let's say kalau something that is more simple, rokok itu apa? Sebagai orang yang anti rokok, saya kan tidak akan definisikan rokok sebagai sesuatu yang sesuai kamus. Saya kan definisi rokok sebagai alat pembunuh massal. Well, which is true kan, rokok itu membunuh banyak orang, and secara subjektif true. Tapi nggak salah total. Kayak there is a line between subjectively defining something sama sesuatu yang kayak betul-betul salah. Kalau ada yang bilang rokok itu makanan, that's when you need to redefine it. Oh ya, basically kayak apa yang dia bilang sama Salam. Kalau saya kan secara objektif jelaskan apa itu Unhas. Unhas adalah universitas yang ada di perintis, yang ada di Kota Makassar. Kayak boring. What you guys should do kayak kan Unhas adalah merupakan salah satu universitas anggap saja kan pro Unhas. Kalian bisa ngejelasin bahwa Unas itu merupakan kampus yang masuk World Class University, banyak fasilitasnya, bla bla bla. Kalau sebagai saya oposisi yang anti Unhas, saya kan bilang kampus Unas adalah kampus yang tidak inklusif. Sehingga UKT tapi somehow fasilitasnya jelek. Kamar mandi suka dikunci, jalan bolong. That's how I would do it. Kalau kalian pro something, you guys should define it as something that is kayak bagus sekali. If you guys are against something, you guys should kasih definition yang kayak jahat sekali. Any question? Ada lagi? Atau masih kurang jelas? Ada yang masih nggak ngerti tentang strategi definition? Okay. Any other? Ada pertanyaan lain atau gimana? Any other questions about something else other than strategic definitions? Okay, 7 layer but one liner. Maksudnya kalian let's say kasih 7 penjelasan about something, tapi setiap penjelasannya itu hanya satu kalimat saja. It's more important to have cuman let's say apa kalian mau jelaskan apa benefitnya feminisme. Kalian bisa jelaskan feminisme itu punya 2 benefit, tapi benefitnya well explained. Bagaimana benefitnya bisa terjadi, sepenting apa benefitnya, kenapa benefitnya eksklusif, kenapa benefitnya itu urgent dan sebagainya. Daripada kalian bikin 7 layer ngejelaskan apa-apa benefitnya, tapi nggak ada penjelasan tambahan kenapa again benefitnya itu likely to happen. Kayak mending kalian bahkan satu saja benefitnya, tapi benefitnya betul-betul lengkap explanation-nya, dibanding 7 tapi kayak satu kalimat di semua benefitnya. Okay, Aura, what's your question?
Jadi Kak, tadi orang mention about setup yang sekan-sekan tidak bukan. For me, my setup is always about apa yang gitu Kak?
Wait, is it just me or Aura nggak terlalu audible suaranya?
Iya kan, nggak terlalu audible.
Okay. Well, nunggu Aura. Coba Harifah, what's your question? Even though probably you're more qualified than me, what's your question?
Astagfirullah. Thank you, Kanail, for the time. My question is quite simple. Can you give us like the newbies tips and trick for like making a clear likelihood? What type of what things that we should explain in making a likelihood for a clear argument? Thank you.
Anjir, sengaja nih anak. Wait, okay, fine then. An example of kayak bagaimana likelihood analysisnya something can happen, for example, like a type of a benefit. right? So for example, let's say in an argument claiming that apa ya? Let's say kita bisa bilang feminisme itu bakal achieve equal rights. Tapi nggak sampai situ. Kayak you guys have to explain kenapa feminisme sebagai suatu ideologi bisa then achieve equal rights. Kalian bisa menjelaskan likelihood analysisnya kayak okay, for example ada organisasi-organisasi feminis yang for example selalu nge-advocate for changes in societal norms, for example nge-advocate tangible changes in social programs within the government. Terus bagaimana likelihood prosesnya? Oke, organisasi feminis biasanya demo di jalan, menuntut for example perubahan terjadi, dan biasanya politicians or people in power bakal listen to them for two reasons. Because one, sometimes there are a major voting block. Politicians itu greedy, mereka selalu mau dapat suara. That's why mereka bakal ke incentivize untuk satisfy the interest of these people supaya mereka bisa terpilih lagi. That's why contoh feminisme bisa achieve equal rights karena mereka bisa likely untuk push politicians untuk then make social programs that can help set up gender equality.
Oke, Kak.
Okay.
Oh, berarti the first point that we should do is to make a premise dulu, and after that kayak provide reasoning. Then okay. Thank you, Kak Nail.
So basically, I don't know if you've heard of RL. So basically the assertion, apa yang kalian mau jelaskan, terus reasoning, example, dan link back. Itu yang biasa, for example, biasa diajarkan di SMA, di SMP tentang debat, bahkan di debat-debat bahasa Indonesia. Okay. So Aura, you've mentioned about second speaker of excellence setup, but is it enough if yep, you guys can explain sebenarnya kenapa what is happening in status quo is important, or why is it harmful, why status quo is good enough in your side. Ya, sebenarnya depends on what is happening. Kalau seandainya let's say first speaker kalian, let's say ini multi mekanisme, and your first speaker lupa bawa mekanisme, ya sebagai second speaker dan kau harus bawa mekanismenya di sisi kalian bagaimana. Sebenarnya ideally ini setup masuk ke role-nya first speaker, but sometimes bisa juga jatuh ke second speaker. Biasanya setup juga itu kalian again bisa apalagi di mosi yang secara eksplisit menjelaskan ngebawa perspektifnya suatu aktor, kalian harus bawa karakterisasi dan kontekstualisasi aktor di dalam setup kalian. Kalau kalian mau untuk bawa di setup, usually kalau seandainya kalian bawa karakterisasi sudah bawa karakterisasi di first speaker, kadang mungkin di second speaker baru kepikiran karakterisasi baru kepikiran kontekstualisasi baru kepikiran problem or bahkan mekanisme yang kalian merasa bagus tapi sebenarnya lupa dibawa di first. Itu bisa kalian bisa bawa. Tapi kalau kalian merasa okay, setup good enough in first, ya sudah nggak usah bawa, or setup kalian integrasikan ke dalam argumen instead of having just di awal speech. Dan itu sebenarnya a matter of preference, a matter of style. Contoh kayak ada orang-orang yang kayak saya for example suka bawa karakterisasi memang di awal terus di link back di dalam argumen. Tapi cons-nya begitu itu kadang waste time. Ada orang-orang yang merasa okay, kita bawa saja ke dalam argumen supaya bisa save time. Ada juga kayak Rike biasa bawa begitu, kayak Kanazal biasa bawa karakterisasinya di dalam argumen instead of di awal. Oke, siapa lagi yang bertanya? Ada tadi yang chat private kak? Forgot who it was. Okay, wait. Any other questions then? Ada pertanyaan lain? Okay, sure. Okay, well, wait. Because sometimes if kita lupa. Wait. Kalau wait. Biasa kalau kita lupa set up and second speaker yang jelaskan bakalan diserang sama lawan, gimana kan counternya in the situation. Usually sebenarnya it's not that problematic kalau kalian sebenarnya lupa bawa di first terus dibawa di second. Tapi yang problematiknya sebenarnya kalian kalau over speaker kalian nggak bawa bakal dicolong sama over speakernya lawan. Tapi that doesn't happen, kadang juga over speakernya juga kecolongan juga. Tapi you guys should again kalau kalian merasa set up sampai karakterisasi dan kontekstualisasi yang dibawa sama oposisi sama jangan kalian yang lupa dibawa sama government, kalian for example bisa nge-clarify or bahkan kasih counter karakterisasi, counter kontekstualisasi. Yes, and that's basically the counter. Kalau udah diserang and di take over sama lawan, the ability to make a setup in the debate, kalian bisa just give a counter setup. It's as simple as that. Oke. Siapa yang angkat tangan? Okay, Naz. What's your question?
Firstly, am I audible, Kak?
Yes, you're audible.
My question is quite related to Aura's question. What if I'm, as the third speaker, thinks of a very strong argument that I think would really boost up our opinion, but as you have explained, the third speaker cannot actually make new arguments. So, what should we do in that situation?
Ini biasanya kalau case building itu biasa third speaker biasa nge-feed atau kayak kasih kalau kalian kepikiran argumen, usahakan kasih ke first sama second speaker kalian buat dibawa. Let's say for example, let's say kalian baru third speakernya mau bicara, baru kalian kepikiran one argument. What you guys should do then? Assuming that it is something that's completely new, argumennya, explanation-nya kalian, sebenarnya ini nggak boleh, but kalau kalian pintar-pintar bisa lakukan, what you guys can do, kalian masukkan ke dalam rebuttal kalian. Kayak kalian, kalau seandainya ada poinnya lawan kalian yang the opposite of the argument that your side wants to make, for example, kalian bisa rebuttal lawan kalian, terus make a comparative in our side, kita bakal bring this. Even though sebenarnya this is an argument, tapi kalian bisa kayak sembunyi-sembunyikan argumen kalian, terus di cover as if it's a rebuttal, atau kalian bisa bawa ke dalam clash-nya. That is something that saya pernah lakukan. That is something that Rike pernah lakukan. That is something that almost most of speakers pernah lakukan. Ketika mereka ya. So basically sebenarnya again, kalau kalian memang betul-betul harus coba case building di awal. Kalau kalian punya argumen yang asset third speaker nggak bisa bawa, usahakan kasih ke first sama second.
Okay, thank you so much, Kak.
Oke. Siapa lagi yang angkat tangan? Okay, wait. Is there a way to make a good argument, like we only have 15 minutes to case build and we have to deliver a 7-minute argument and rebuttal it? Like how can we manage time to case building in a short time? Again, it depends on the system. Kadang kalau kita Asian yang satu yang 3 lawan 3 itu sebenarnya 30 menit. Tapi kalau BP yang 4 tim, 1 tim 2 orang itu memang 15 menit. This is another thing kayak how do you case build. Sebenarnya the style of case building itu banyak orang banyak beda-beda. So assuming kalian open government cuma punya 15 menit untuk make a 7-minute speech, kalian again hal yang paling pertama kalian lakukan itu setup. Kalian menjelaskan kayak apa sebenarnya arah case kalian mau bawa kemana? Apakah kalian akan bawa argumen yang sifatnya radical atau kalian hanya mau bawa argumen yang lebih moderat? Apakah sebagai sebagai tim kalian mau bawa mekanisme seperti apa? Kalian harus determine what kind of problems, apa sebenarnya core problem yang mau di-touch di debate. Yes, it is a challenge to do it in 15 minutes, tapi actually debate itu case building nggak hanya 15 menit atau 30 menit. Case building is basically your whole experience. Kayak ketika kalian latihan sekarang ini sebenarnya sudah case building untuk kalian lomba debat in next week. Sebenarnya practice matter yang kalian lakukan hari ini itu jadi case building untuk lomba kalian let's say bulan depan bahkan tahun depan. So basically case building sebenarnya not just 15 minutes before the debate, tapi actually your whole debating career. Karena for example mungkin ada argumen yang kalian sudah tahu tahu bahkan sebelum baca mosinya karena kalian sudah pernah pelajari, mungkin kalian sudah pernah dapat dan usually kalian nggak usah pikir lagi, kalian tinggal ingat terus kasih masuk ke case. Karena oftentimes motion itu banyak yang mirip-mirip argumennya. So, okay, any other questions? So, yeah, basically setup itu the most important thing sebagai tim karena itu yang nge-decide apa identitinya timmu, especially in a BP debate. Sebenarnya di AP juga penting sekali setup. Okay, any other questions? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to assume no more questions. Next, please. Okay, practice. I'm going to give you 15 minutes untuk nge-write a speech on this house belief that schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. You guys have 15 minutes. Saya nanti akan tunjuk 2 orang untuk to try and make a speech. Nggak harus 7 menit, just do sebisa kalian saja. Okay? 15 minutes from now. Untuk posisi, it depends on you guys. Kalau kalian mau bikin speech on government, that's okay. Untuk speech on opposition, that is okay as well. Okay, everyone, time's up. Sebelum saya tunjuk, ada yang mau volunteer nggak? Ada yang mau volunteer? Baik. Baik, kenapa suddenly ada 2 orang keluar? Ada yang mau volunteer? Ada yang mau volunteer nggak? Ini. Any volunteer? Three, two, one. Okay, since there's no volunteer, saya tunjuk. Hmm. Wait. Siapa sih yang ikut yang bis UI tapi nggak datang kemarin waktu latihan? Coba Rivaldi. Coba Rivaldi. Is Rivaldi here? Oke. Coba novice finalisnya Novet. Siapa novice finalisnya Novet? Siapa itu? Sama aku dulu ya. Novice bukan sekedar finalis, runner up, second runner up.
Oh, karena itu bilang tadi saya tahu. Oke, let's try. Tapi kayak ini masih limited into definition. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Kanta, this house believes that schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. I think this motion is need research first. Tapi kayak ya udahlah ya. Oke. Iya, karena masih sampai definition tapi kayak please starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. our burden as a government team is to explain why school should not be the place for people to get instilled by a sense of patriotism. But first of all, I think like what we need to clarify in government team is to understand what is patriotism at the very first point. Understand that patriotism is not equal to nationalism. It's more than just the sense that can make you love your nationality, but to prioritize the nationality more than yourself. It teaches you to be a selfless person in case of nation interest, not limited to that, but also patriotism currently clouded with so much political propaganda, highly integrated with political interests. And what do we mean by that? Is that most of the cases, what defined as patriot action is something that has settled by those who are in power, which is a majority, which is really, really not fair with the the interest of minority at the end. I will explain you later. But we think that also, in our status quo, a person could be considered considered patriotic. It's something that really, really integrated with protest and rough action, something like participating in protest for racial equality, and the image is very what to say. The image is very brutal, which very dangerous for the student in the school. And we say that patriotism also extremely teach you to be very, very exclusive in terms of your racial identity and so on and so forth, right? Patriotism currently kind of problematic since it's also clouded by historical propaganda. We are talking about how Black people in America feeling very unfair the moment they think that the thing that they do is always felt in the eyes of majority, for example. But ya, jam sampai situ kan Adel, gimana? Sudah?
Oh ya, sudah oke. Tadi tuh government ada yang volunteer opposition, or kalau enggak, it's okay government lagi. Kak Salam tadi katanya mau yang kedua.
Oh ya, but ya, disclaimer ini saya kebanyakan pakai translate because you know that my English is bad. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We believe that instilling patriotism in school is a bad doctrine from the state in order to capitalize the citizen and is cunning way to justify all the state failure in creating ideal condition by telling people to always sacrifice and accept even when their country is failed. What do you mean by instilling patriotism in school? First, you are always taught to make sacrifice for the country. Second, it's okay if your salary is low as long as you work domestically rather than working abroad. I just have one argument. Why is patriotism is a bad narrative for the country? Before getting into the argument, what model of rejection we will use? We will happy to remove all narrative of sacrifice for the country in all lesson and let people appreciate the result of their work by being pragmatic people so that they are not made fools of by the country, by the state. Why can this justify? This directly address to my first argument as well about why instilling patriotism in school is bad. First, I think this is not accordance with good consent because they are instilling and tough since they are under 18 years old, where they are not mature enough to make their own choice and their own stance. Plus, the existence of this doctrine has a huge impact on how individual will have a reference for behaving in the future. So they will have a tendency to sacrifice their own interests for the sake of their country. Second, I believe that everyone has the right to the result of their effort, and the state should not instill in a person's subconscious mind the need to sacrifice himself for country that has never appreciated him. My third point, maybe this is quite philosophical, but I think that patriotism is not something that should be forced and should be allowed to grow naturally through life experience about how someone sees the goodness of their country and love their country naturally. If indeed a country has the right to be loved based on how they provide fulfillment to its citizen, I don't think the country need to worry about not being loved and force patriotism onto its citizen. Udah, Nail.
Okay, thank you for that. Tadi both governments, ada yang bisa opposition?
I can vouch for that. Maybe I can try.
Ini siapa? By the way.
Saya Raihan, Kak.
Okay. You can start then.
Okay. Should I just start now? I will be delivering for opposition. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges and respected opponents, well, aka for this discussion, thank you for this opportunity to engage in a thoughtful discussion as to this house believes that schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. But today, I stand before you to present the case from the opposition standpoint. And as we delve into the intricacies of this matter, let us consider the implication, weight of the evidence, and collectively to seek a deeper understanding in the issue at hand. When talking about patriotism, we sometimes talk of nationalistic approach in devoting an individual's heart to a nation or land, while in this case, to instill a moral sense into an educational environment for higher levels such as junior school or to a college level academia. And the instill of patriotism can be reflected upon the establishment of civic education and the learning process of Pancasila as a moral value in Indonesia. And every day we might think, what use could all of this education on civic duties and Pancasila will benefit for? Well, simply it is to remind us of our history. We can't learn and study the way of our history and civic principle without a moral value, as in patriotism. It would mean to study a math without logical thinking, to study physics without analytical thinking, or even to study medicine without code of ethics. Simply, avoiding patriotism, especially in the aforementioned environment, is a form of ignorance to our education, our moral value, and life principle dedicated on the patriotism of our history. And it's easy to say that we should just avoid all of this and avoid the instill of patriotism in our learning environment. But in conclusion, we have navigated through all of history, especially in our nation history, that many sacrifice, many principle and many things that we feel right now that we are able to speak out, we are able to live on our life is basically from the aforementioned patriotism as a moral value for someone to defend their country and sacrifice for the country. It is the value it is the value that someone understand a life without patriotism shown from our history, like Budi Utomo and Sumpah Pemuda and etc., have shown that it is the patriotism from our own nation that shows the principle of our history to be made. Someone should not be forced to learn something, and the government standpoint said that yes, someone should not be forced to learn something, but and they also said it's better for them to naturally learn. But in that standpoint, if someone were to learn a history or a civic duties, then it is the aforementioned moral sense of patriotism that will help them naturally to learn a civic duties or a civic education in a learning environment. But to that, with careful consideration, we must also define that patriotism is a sense of moral value that help us to build or to feel our history through books, or textbooks, or through stories, or everything that we feel to feel or to reflect upon every actor from the past history of Indonesia that reflect on their sacrifice to build on this country. And in the careful consideration with that compelling arguments, I urge you to reflect on that discourse. It is in my hope that you find merit in this case, and let us leave this debate chamber to not merely adversary, but also individuals that feel patriotism as a moral value by the exchange of ideas. And thank you. Maybe that's all from me.
Okay, thank you for that. Coba lagi Aura, you can try. Anyone yang raise? Okay.
Am I audible, Kak?
Yep, you're audible.
Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are debating the resolution schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. We, on the negative team, strongly oppose this resolution. The opposing view to the motion schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism might be that schools should not only instill a sense of patriotism in their students, but they should actively promote it. This view suggests that patriotism is a positive sentiment that can unite and strengthen a nation, and it argues that schools have a responsibility to promote national pride and a sense of identity among students. By instilling a sense of patriotism, schools can help students appreciate their country histories, culture, and achievements, and encourage them to support their nation in times of need or crisis. We believe that patriotism is an important value that should be instilled in students from an early age. We argue that teaching patriotism in schools can help students develop a sense of pride and respect for their country, which can lead to a more cohesive and unified society. We also believe that patriotism can be taught in a way that encourages critical thinking and independent thought, and that it can be a force for positive change in society. They suggest that schools should teach students about the positive aspects of their country's history and culture, while also acknowledging its flaws and shortcomings. They believe that a balanced and a nuanced approach to teaching patriotism can help students become engaged and responsible citizens who are committed to making their country a better place. By instilling a sense of patriotism, one, students can appreciate their country's history, culture, and achievement, and encourage them to support their nation in times of need or crisis. Two, it can instill in them a love for their country and a sense of pride for its achievements and values. Three, it can give them a sense of identity and belongings, as well as a purpose in society. Four, it can help them appreciate and respect their fellow citizens, regardless of their differences or backgrounds. And five, it can inspire them to contribute to the development and progress of their country, as well as to defend it from the threats or challenges. And last, it can foster critical thinking and civic engagement, as well as the willingness to learn from the history and culture of their country. After all, teaching patriotism to students can have several benefits. Patriotism can help students develop a sense of pride and respect for their country, which can lead to be a more cohesive and unified society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Ada yang mau coba? Coba Naz, you can try.
Okay, Kat, but before I say my speech, I just want to say that I have zero experience in debating, so please provide me with as much feedback as you want. So I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I stand here as the opposition side of the motion that believes schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. Patriotism is the most basic quality a person should have, which is to be devoted to one's own country and protect it with all one's might. Why? Because countries need their people. Why is that? Because without the sense of patriotism, how will a country stand strong? Who's going to protect a country if not the people who belong to it? It is important for students to have a sense of patriotism because they are the continuation of the people before them who fought for the country, who then entrusted them in protecting their country. With patriotism being instilled from the most familiar environment, students can learn how to help and work with each other, regardless of their age and gender, in building a strong nation, which then helps the citizens themselves to have brighter and better futures. When a time of crisis comes, I believe that students who have been instilled with patriotism will be the ones who will be able to urge their citizens to form a group of shared identity, which then will help them overcome challenges, increase peace among the people, and protect the overall well-being of the nation. It is, in every sense, wrong to avoid implanting such a great quality on students through the environment they are most common with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Maybe for feedback saya kasih in the end for everyone. Wait, kayaknya tadi ada yang angkat tangan, but turunkan. Who was it? Dian, I think. Mau coba or gimana?
Yes, I think I want to try, but I'm scared the time will be end.
Yeah? It's okay, you can try.
Yeah, thank you for the change. Correct me if I'm wrong. So every Indonesian citizen must have an attitude of patriotism. This attitude is important to maintain the unity and integrity of the nation, especially as we enter the next political year. In next year, which is we will elect a new president. If uh, if schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism, then how will the nation's future generation know the sacrifice of the nation's heroes? With the spirit of patriotism that students have, they will grow their enthusiasm for advancing the nation. As quoted from Monsignor Sukarno, never forget their story. This quote makes us aware that this nation has a story that has been built by heroes. So it is appropriate as the younger generation that we must continue their struggle. Struggle is not uh, struggle is not struggle is not just resistance, but uh, about supporting the development process in all things. The task of the youth is to fill independence with a sense of love for the country. This can be realized from small things such as caring for the environment and changing people based on their religion or ethnicity, loving the domestic products, and so on. This movement can start from the family, school, community, and etc. Thank you.
I would like to do for a proposition.
Who's this?
Ahmad Fozan.
Okay, you can try.
Okay. First of all, I'm sorry if my argument is a bit too short, but because I see most of my friends do opposition sides, I would like to do the proposition. All right, starting my speech at 3, 2, 1. So this house believe that schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. First of all, I would like to tell you about the definition of patriotism itself. So to me, patriotism is a real threat in a community or itself we call school that could
endanger the integrity of the students, both mentally and physically. Why do I say so? Because by kids having high patriotism, it made them feels more arrogance. It made themselves feels more arrogant and end up not appreciating any difference between other. It is true that patriotism is good for the country, but although they love country, but they don't love the difference between every student, it is really not, it's useless. And then excessive patriotism can be dangerous for children because it can trigger exclusive attitude, close oneself to difference, and hinder their development of critical thinking. So besides of having high patriotism in school, it is important to teach critical and inclusive values to form a generation that respects diversity and is able to think independently. Therefore, I shall not stand with the I shall not I shall stand with this house. By schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism for the sake of the what do you call that? The respect, so they have respect to others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And the last one itu Asri. Wahid.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Hold on, let me just prepare myself real quick. Okay, so my pronouns are most definitely and unequivocally he, him, and I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, when we, but before we start, is it possible if I can deliver the speech in on behalf of government?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, so I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, when we think of schools, we think of children or teenagers talking or playing with their friends and studying to prepare themselves for what they will encounter in the near future. We see the latter in the form of lessons about science, social studies, maths, economics, everything a conventional school curriculum would provide to students seeking tuition. But for years, decades, even centuries, schools have become a medium to instill patriotic values. And this can be seen in lessons such as how sacrificing one's life to a nation can be beneficial towards the longevity of the nation, teaching about the historical background of a particular country, or even something as mundane as teaching teaching about the structure of government. We believe that this can only set a dangerous precedent towards students. Hence, this is why we will stand to propose that schools should avoid instilling a sense of patriotism. But before we delve further into our arguments as to why this will be the case, we have to realize, we also have to delve further into why patriotism in any case would be dangerous to students and so on and so forth. Sure, when we think of patriotism, we it may refer to the extent of one's love towards their country, but when we see it in this context, patriotism isn't really about how people show love for their country, but rather how one is willing to do anything, even something as dangerous or as destroying that other countries perceived as threats, or other groups or communities in that matter, to protect their country. Now, of course, when we see this, when we see it in that particular regard, not only will this implicate how students will likely perceive their livelihoods in the future, but also why this, but this will also implicate the stability of every nation in general. We do acknowledge that no country would forego any values of patriotism, nor would they perceive or view such values in low esteem, specifically because patriotism in any way is beneficial in developing one's mindset or identity and so on and so forth. But for the sake of argument, we think we think that patriotism in any case in this regard would be limitless, and it could only lead to it can only lead to dangerous acts by citizens and so on and so forth. So that is so in that regard, we'll be answering that our case will be answering will be explained through one main question through answering one main question: why instilling patriotism towards students sets a very dangerous precedent. Now, in answering that particular question, we have to think about why that is the case. First, it will give room for the rise of fanaticism, and second, it gives rise for its use as a tool or weapon of ideology or propaganda. Now, let's delve further into the first answer: why it gives room for the rise of fanaticism. When we backtrack towards what we believe that patriotism can inflict or inflict upon students, we know that patriotism can also be used as a tool to measure how people show not just how people show love for their country, but also how one is willing to do anything, even something as destructive, even destructive acts to protect, or perhaps to protect their country. So we will explain why this will implicate students and how the education system works. When students are expected or forced to show love for their country, it instills the need for such students to go through extensive lengths to prove that they love their country, and that they are willing to do anything to protect and preserve its core values. When we see this, it devolves into a sort of competition in which students would essentially strive to prove themselves far better than each other, and this can lead to very destructive acts. Now this leads to the rise of fanatical ideologies regarding how they can protect their country and so on and so forth. Now the opposition may provide the argument that, oh, this will bolster their identity. So fanaticism is only a side effect of that particular effect, and so on and so forth. But understand that identities are irrelevant when instilling values of patriotism. When instilling values of patriotism, that particular identity has become so distorted that it merely defines students as competing themselves to prove that they can protect their country and so on and so forth. So that particular in any case, that particular identity becomes distorted, and therefore that argument doesn't work. Second, it gives rise for its use as a tool or weapon of ideology or propaganda. When we backtrack to what has been previously said, we know that schools have become a medium to instill patriotic values. And when we see lessons such as political science, political studies, and civics, the way that those lessons have been delivered is no coincidence. When we see how governments all around the world have been using schools to essentially instill that particular sense of patriotism, and when we realize this, it becomes a very it obviously becomes it obviously opens the room for such governments to also manipulate the mindsets of such students, thereby thereby to an extent brainwashing them, so that they would bow down to such values. So that is why it becomes a rather dangerous. That is why it sets a very dangerous precedent, and that is why we are proud to propose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's the last one since we're running out of time. And since again we're running out of time, mungkin my feedback is not necessarily jatuh ke meter, karena kalau kita meter loading it's going to take a long time. So I think my feedback in terms of structure, I think some of you should have managed to explain it more extensively than the others, and almost everyone itu sudah masih under time, which is understandable karena ya masih minim experience, and also untuk waktu case building hanya 15 menit. But I think most of you itu biasanya langsung loncat langsung ke dalam argumen. What's your arguments? Apa rebuttal kalian? Argumennya apa aja? But I think it's quite important to first again lihat dulu sebenarnya kalau sekolah bagaimana manifestasinya sekolah dalam nge-instill patriotisme. Kayak contoh mungkin kayak kelas PKN, upacara, bahkan sesimpel tak pasang foto Pancasila, pasang foto bendera, pasang foto foto presiden dan wakil presiden di dalam kelas itu sudah termasuk contoh sekolah yang install patriotisme. Terus apa sih kayak problem utamanya dan kayak what is exactly the identity of your team? Kayak karena government bisa bawa case-nya, not necessarily saying that patriotisme itu objectively bad. Kan kalian bahkan bisa sort of lebih moderat bilang kalau patriotisme is okay, tapi patriotisme yang diajar di sekolah itu buruk karena it's unhealthy, karena for example targetnya adalah anak-anak, dan anak-anak itu belum rasional untuk bisa ngedetermine what kind of patriotism yang sehat, mana yang buruk. You guys can explain it like that. Di opposition juga bisa begitu. For example, kalian bisa jelaskan bahwa okay, patriotisme mungkin secara objektif not always good, tapi hanya di sekolah lah di mana patriotisme itu bisa diajarkan dengan baik, diajarkan bagaimana dengan sehat. Why is it important to teach patriotism, especially in schools, in comparison to other medium? Kenapa mengajar patriotisme di sekolah itu lebih baik dibanding diajarkan di rumah misalnya? Kenapa lebih baik dibanding diajarkan di arena publik atau di diskursus publik? Kalian bisa jelaskan, for example, kayak kenapa patriotisme itu harus cepat-cepat diajarkan dari kecil dibanding diajarkan dulu di orang dewasa, for example. Kenapa having standardized method of teaching patriotisme di sekolah itu far more important far more effective untuk create healthy patriotism dibanding di arena publik misalnya. Kayak kalian bisa contoh jelaskan, karena yang kita mau ciptakan itulah patriotisme yang healthy, and it's harder to make a healthy patriotism ketika ada interpretasi yang berbeda-beda misalnya, for example. Most of you masih belum melakukan itu, which is understandable. Kalian bisa jelaskan dulu, for example, stance-nya kalian bagaimana, manifestasi problem yang exist di status quo bagaimana, kontekstualisasi status quo bagaimana, dan karakterisasi sekolah dan anak-anak itu kayak gimana. Apakah anak-anak itu serasional itu untuk bisa terima pelajaran patriotisme di sekolah? Apakah nanti mereka bisa ciptakan patriotisme di dalam diri mereka yang sifatnya lebih sehat, atau patriotismenya agresif, atau bagaimana? Bisa dijelaskan. Which something kayak mungkin di setup kalian nggak bawa, tapi kalian bisa bawa di dalam argumen. Which even then masih ada yang nggak bawa. But it's okay. It's understandable. Ini masih latihan awal-awal. What is important itu your willingness to try and improve. I appreciate semua yang mau coba untuk speak up and deliver a speech. It's important to take the first step dibanding sama sekali enggak. So with that, it ends our training session. Thank you for everyone yang participate dan hadir, dan also berpartisipasi secara aktif. Since sudah jam 10, it ends the session. Thank you, everyone. I give it back to Raihan, since there is an important announcement to make.
Okay, thank you so much, Kanail. It's been a wonderful Lego practice session. Okay, wait up, guys. Before you leave, I need to take a screenshot first for your. Okay, wait up, wait up, wait up. Oke, untuk absennya udah clear. Thank you so much for Kanail. Oke, di I need to akan saya sampaikan beberapa hal yang penting. Firstly, untuk regular session next week itu kita kayaknya tidak bisa untuk hari Jumat dan Sabtu atau Minggu, pokoknya weekend, guys. Karena ya, like I said before, currently kita lagi short on coaches. So untuk minggu depan most likely kita bakal regular practice di either hari Selasa, hari Rabu, atau hari Kamis. Untuk info, saya tidak bisa konfirmasi untuk malam ini, but I'll make sure I'll let you guys know like 24 hours prior di schedule. Oke, jadi 24 jam sebelum jadwalnya, entah itu nanti hari Selasa atau hari Rabu, I'll let you know 24 jam sebelumnya. Itu, and then untuk recording untuk regular practice pertama dan kedua kita yang Karika dan Kaliza akan saya share sekalian juga dengan recording dari Kanail untuk malam ini itu besok pagi di grup dalam bentuk Google Drive. It's supposed to be uploaded to HEDS YouTube, but karena kakak MPR kita lagi sibuk, so yeah, I'm just gonna give you guys the Google Drive. Yeah, I'll upload it tonight, but I'll give you guys the link in the group by tomorrow morning, maybe 10 a.m. or after. Okay, so thank you guys. Terima kasih untuk yang telah berpartisipasi, untuk yang menyempatkan hadir, dan yang being active during sessionnya Kak Nail. Okay, so thank you. See you next week. Okay, I'll end the meeting for all. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.